Hi, everyone. Welcome to our event today. I'm so excited to have you join us. We will go ahead and get started and we'll have our opening by YouTube Day.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yetunde Barimo, and I'm a team member at Pursuing the Esquire. And I want to welcome you all to tonight's panel, the All Rise panel. Thank you all for tuning in. This is the second event of Pursuing the Esquire's July panel series entitled Legal Lifelines. The following panels are scheduled for every Wednesday for the rest of this month. Tonight, you will get a glimpse into these illustrious panelists' journey to becoming a judge. But before we get started, I do want to direct your attention to our website, pursuingtheesquire.com, where you can learn more about our mentorship program and the different resources we have for aspiring attorneys of color. Our mentorship program is geared towards rising juniors and seniors, as well as current law students. There is also a section on the site highlighting our team members, and just to give them due recognition as they are on the call, they are Kirsten Evans, Tracy Preville, and Alicia Tidwell. Also, feel free to follow us on Instagram at Pursuing ESQ. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce the founder of Pursuing the Esquire, Danielle Hardy, who will be moderating tonight's panel.
Thank you so much, Yetunde. And again, good evening and welcome to everyone who is joining us tonight. I'm very excited to be hosting this episode 2 in our panel series with these judges who are just incredible, not only as a judge, but as people in the community, 2 of which I am a former law clerk for. I will go ahead and get started and introduce our panelists, and we are going to jump right into some really great questions. The first judge that I will be introducing is the Honorable Doneen Carrington Martin. Judge Carrington Martin was born and raised in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, New York. She is a proud graduate of Syracuse University, where she received her bachelor's degree, and a graduate of Benjamin Cardozo School of Law, where she obtained her Juris Doctor. Prior to becoming a judge, Judge Carrington Martin worked as a prosecutor in the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office in Maryland. During her tenure there, she prosecuted various types of criminal and traffic misdemeanors, felonies, and vehicular homicides. She then worked in private practice with a firm located in Baltimore, Maryland. Later, she served as the chief of the Special Victims and Family Violence Unit in the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office since 2003, where she managed a staff of 20 attorneys who prosecuted domestic violence, sexual assaults, child abuse, homicide, and felony cases involving special victims and family violence, paralegals, and victim witness coordinators who supported them. In 2017, she made history. Judge Carrington Martin was appointed to the Circuit Court of Charles County, Maryland, making her the first African-American female judge appointed in the history of Charles County, Maryland. Currently, and for more than 14 years, Judge Carrington Martin has served as an adjunct faculty member at Bowie State University. She is also an adjunct faculty member at the College of Southern Maryland. She teaches other judges at the annual State of Maryland Judicial Conference, and she is a proud member of the Nu Zeta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, amongst other prominent organizations. She also routinely hosts elementary, middle school students, and Girl Scouts in the courthouse to see what it's like to be a judge. Welcome, Judge Carrington.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next up, I'll be introducing the Honorable Karen H. Mason. Judge Mason earned her JD from Catholic University of America and her bachelor's from the University of Dayton. For over 8 years, Judge Mason worked as an assistant state's attorney for the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office. She prosecuted homicide and other major crime cases. Her trial experience also includes 2 years in the field of personal injury litigation. In 2006, she was appointed Family Division Magistrate for Prince George's County, Maryland, where she handled matters within the Family Division, Domestic and Child Support Case Management Plan, as well as juvenile court matters. In 2016, Judge Mason was elevated from the district court to the circuit court, where she has served. While sitting in the district court, Judge Mason presided over matters on the court's mental health docket, and she was appointed to the district court, preceded by varied legal experience. Judge Mason was a Maryland trial attorney as well as currently sitting on the Prince George's County Circuit Court, where she presides over cases involving domestic, civil, and criminal law. Judge Mason is further designated to preside over matters on the court's problem-solving specialty dockets and sitting in adult drug court. She is also a member of the Prince George's County Bar Association, the Maryland State Bar Association, and the J. Franklin Bourne Bar Association. Judge Mason is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and she currently lives in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and is a proud mother of 2. Welcome, Judge Mason.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Good evening to all of you.
Next, I will be introducing Judge Scott Carrington. The Honorable Judge Scott Carrington is a graduate of Bowie State University, where he earned his bachelor's in sociology, and a graduate of Western Michigan Cooley School of Law, where he earned his Juris Doctor. Judge Carrington is a former law clerk for the Honorable Rodney C. Warren of the Circuit Court in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. For 13 years, he worked in the Assistant State's Attorney's Office for Prince George's County, in the Grand Jury, Violent Crimes, and Felony Trial Units, and the Juvenile and District Court Divisions. Judge Carrington started his judgeship in the District Court in 2017, where he currently presides over misdemeanor, criminal, and traffic cases, landlord and tenant actions, large and small civil claims, and domestic violence cases. Judge Carrington also has been active in the United States Army Reserve since 2001, where he is the current commander of the 159th Military Police Battalion with over 200 soldiers, and the public safety officer on the Civil Affairs Command's Functional Specialty Team. Welcome, Judge Carrington.
Welcome, glad to be here.
Finally, I will be introducing the Honorable Judge Angela Robinson. Judge Robinson is a graduate of the Cheshire Academy, Rutgers University, and Yale University School of Law. She is a James W. Cooper Fellow of the Connecticut Bar Foundation and serves on the boards of the Greater New Haven Art Council and the New Haven Legal Assistance. She's a visiting professor at Quinnipiac University School of Law, where she teaches critical race theory, evidence, and remedies. And she also teaches trial practice at Yale Law School. As a judge, Judge Robertson wrote over 400 judicial decisions and presided over thousands of cases and hundreds of trials. During her 20 years on the bench, she decided or assisted in the settlement of many types of disputes, including criminal, commercial, contract, employment, family, housing, insurance, juvenile, medical, and professional malpractice, amongst others. She served as a civil presiding judge in the New Haven Judicial District, which is the busiest civil docket in the state at that time. She is currently a retired Connecticut Superior Court judge, a diversity and inclusion consultant, and a private mediator. Her private practice focuses on legal organizations, law firms, and nonprofits, for which she draws upon her many years on the bench and legal experience. Welcome, welcome to Judge Robinson. Oh, I think you're muted. Let me unmute you if I can.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you all. And I did not know that I was going to be joining 2 Soras on this panel. So really nice to have a full complement of AKs on here. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And for this particular question, if we could start with Judge Carrington Martin, if you could share with the group and have Judge Mason followed by Judge Carrington and Judge Robertson. If you could just share with the group, did you always want to become a judge? Oh, Judge Carrington Martin, you're muted.
So always means forever. So I think when I started my legal career, I first clerked for a circuit court judge. And during my clerkship, right after law school, I definitely knew at that point that I definitely wanted to become a judge through clerking. Before that, I didn't really, in law school, I hadn't really thought about it as much. But definitely, once I was a law clerk, I realized that it was something that I wanted to do.
Great. Judge Mason?
I can't say I've always wanted to be a judge. When I started college as an undergraduate, my work-study job was in the law library. So that's when I got the legal bug. I wanted to be a lawyer. And so that was really what was driving me, is to become a lawyer. But once I clerked for the Honorable Judge Robert H. Mason, not related, that's when I knew I wanted to be a judge. I wanted to follow in his footsteps. But I can't say I always wanted to be a judge, but I definitely wanted to be a lawyer for a very long time.
Ms. Carrington?
The answer is no. I wanted to be a lawyer since my senior year of high school. I did not think about becoming a judge until I was approached by one of the circuit court judges, Judge Michael Pearson, who he and I were walking out of the courthouse late one evening, and he stopped me and said, "Hey, you need to think about this." And I didn't put my name in until about 4 years later, but Judge Michael Pearson is a judge of color, and he was a prosecutor with Karen and Donine and I at some point, and he put the bug in my ear, and I followed through from there.
Great. Judge Robinson?
I call myself an accidental lawyer because I didn't actually think I was going to be a lawyer in college. And then once I did get to law school, I did think about being a judge because it seemed so important to be the one writing the story, making the decisions. And then I didn't think about it again. I was a trial lawyer for about 10 years, and I represented plaintiffs primarily in like medical malpractice cases, some employment. And I began to see how important the role of the judge was. And it was then that I really revisited it and thought, this is a profession that might be something I'd be good at.
Great. So it appears that, you know, especially for some of our viewers who are unsure about their career path, it appears that it's okay if you don't have a perfect plan, or, you know, if you don't have it all mapped out, or even have an idea of what type of lawyer you want to be, that sometimes a work experience or an internship can have an effect on you to move forward. If Judge Carrington Martin and Judge Carrington can answer this question for our viewers, what is a typical day as a judge? Judge Carrington Martin is in the circuit court, and Judge Carrington is in the district court.
Okay, a typical day actually starts the day before. In law school, I learned the value of preparation. Preparation. So the night before, the law clerk preps my docket. So when I come in, I have a memo on each case. I review the memo once I get in. I calm myself. I try to clear my head. I say a quick prayer. Once the clerk comes out, the courtroom clerk notifies my staff that there's a match set, both sides are there, and they're ready to go. Then I come out, I take the bench. I hear civil and criminal cases. So depending on what type of case it is, determines how long we go. If it's a jury trial, we bring the jury in through the assistance of the law clerk. If it's motions, then we just start going through all of the motions. If it's a family case, we make sure that before I actually have a hearing on a contested family issue, that I stress to the parties that time is money, and if they have attorneys, their attorneys are being charged. So I encourage them to try to resolve the case prior to the court getting involved. We do the hearings. I'll take a break, usually mid-morning when I start to feel myself getting fatigued. Take a quick break, 5-10 minutes, go back on the bench, continue that till around lunchtime, take a quick lunch break. Usually we eat in chambers. We try to kind of decompress with what's going on. I handle calls. Sometimes I'm signing motions. Then I go back on the bench for the afternoon. And then I usually try to get off the bench at around 4:30, because the clerk and the staff have been there all day. So I'm very cognizant of, I don't either want them to be fatigued, because the courtroom clerk I always tell litigants, is the most important person in the courtroom, because that is the person that is documenting everything that's being done. So it's very important to me that my courtroom clerk is not fatigued. And then I get off the bench, we prep for the next day. I'm on different committees through the judiciary. So depending on, sometimes we have committee meetings during the day. Sometimes we have bench meetings, which are when all the judges meet. So that's a typical day for me.
Thank you so much for that. Judge Carrington, can you give us a typical day in the district court?
Sure. So in a district court in Prince George's County, we handle more cases per judge than anywhere else in the state of Maryland. You're in a different court every day, so you don't have time to look at files and prepare before you go into the courtroom. So the typical day for me is a prayer with my kids on the way to school, making sure that I have the right guidance, the right frame of mind and temperament when I go into the courtroom. I get to court early so that I can touch base with the court clerk and the bailiffs as to how I'm going to function for that day. Gives me an opportunity to look at the files quickly, to have an idea of what I'll be presiding over. And then I take the bench promptly at 8:45, and I call cases. I'll do a first call of the docket. I'll take a recess. We have a large volume of chambers work. I'll go back during a recess, do some chambers work, or look at an issue if I foresee an issue coming up, a pending case that may go to trial. I'll come back after 15 or 20 minutes, finish the docket, repeat the same thing in the afternoon docket. And then if we finish early, I'll do chambers work and light Judge Martin Carrington, or Carrington Martin, whatever it is. I'll go back, do chambers work, but I want to make sure that I get the staff out of there because they have lives. Some of them have second jobs, and so I'm very protective of the court's time.
Great. And it sounds like in both courts, it's very important that your staffs are, well equipped for a long day ahead, and getting all the documents ready for you. And part of that staff includes a law clerk. So if Judge Mason and Judge Robertson could share with the group just how important a law clerk is for your day-to-day, as well as the preparation for the dockets ahead. Starting with Judge Mason.
Thank you. Having a law clerk is invaluable. When I was on the district court, the judges all shared law clerks. There were 2, I believe, for the entire bench. But in circuit court, you have your individual law clerk that you've actually selected. And it's really good to have good chemistry. And just in the interest of full disclosure, Danielle was my law clerk. And we just worked closely, hand in hand. I actually was a law clerk after law school, and it's just a valuable, valuable experience. And that's really what being a law clerk actually was vital to the trajectory of my legal career. It was as a law clerk that I had the exposure of prosecutors and decided I wanted to prosecute cases. And also that's when I learned I also wanted to be a judge. So it's valuable. As Judge Carrington Martin stated, your law clerk will usually retrieve the files, prep the cases for the next day. And sometimes that can take a lot of time because the files are pretty thick. So they have to go through not every, but many of the pleadings just to get a perspective, and then tab. They're picking up the file for the first time. So my jurisdiction is not a small jurisdiction where it's like, oh yeah, I remember that case. You may be putting your hand on that case, you haven't touched it at all, or maybe a year ago or 6 months ago. So you have to, the law clerk typically not at all. You have to go through the pleadings to determine the relevant documents that address the motion. And you just have to be very thorough and detailed. But having a law clerk is something that I just can't imagine not having, and they are just invaluable to your practice. And they also represent your chambers. So if you have a law clerk who is considerate, bright, prepared, it projects a certain image for your chambers. So Danielle was great.
Oh, Judge Mason.
She was great.
Yes, I was a law clerk for both Judge Mason and Judge Carrington Martin. I was absolutely thrilled to do so. I had a great time as a law clerk. And I think just to note that, in some cases, you may not plan to be a law clerk. I know when I was in law school, I never thought I would be a law clerk or in the criminal capacity at all, because I wanted to be a transactional attorney. So I would encourage our viewers that, that is a really good option to consider, whether it's in law school or post-law school, in the interim while you're finding that first job. So Judge Robinson, can you also kind of shed light on your experience with your law clerks?
Sure. It's fascinating to hear the experience in Maryland because our system in Connecticut is a little different. So we have a Connecticut Superior Court, which is the court of general jurisdiction. And that court hears all of the cases. So we don't have the circuit court or the district court. We have a superior court, an appellate court, and a state Supreme Court. And at the superior court level, we get yearly assignments that are content-based. So you're assigned to criminal court for one term or multiple terms. You're assigned to civil court, which is not family. You're assigned to family court or juvenile. And so each of those courts has judges that are assigned for a term. And our term is from September 1st to August 31st. And during that term, whatever court you're assigned to has clerks that work in that court. And interestingly enough, in Connecticut, you can be a court clerk and not be a law school graduate. So it is not usual, but it is possible for someone who is a college graduate to get a job as a court clerk in Connecticut. And you would be assigned to a judge or a court, and you'd work very closely with them depending on what the court is. I think all of the judges have stressed how important the team is. We are the face of justice, but we would not dispense justice without really good team members working. We have our files are mostly electronic now in Connecticut, so the clerks don't have to deal with paper files as much. But they are critical in interfacing with the lawyers, the parties, making sure that the court's the standing orders are enforced. In fact, I had such close relationships with all of my clerks that I consider them family. I mean, I think I have like 20 or 30 kids now because they work so closely with the judges, and it is really true. The hours are long. I don't think people really know how much time goes in to preparing cases and dispensing justice, and our clerks are part of all of that. So that's the Connecticut version.
And that's really interesting to hear the dynamics with the separation of the district court and the circuit court versus superior. So I'm glad that you were able to share that, because we have viewers that are in many states across the country. So we might have some viewers in Connecticut who, could really identify with that as well. So the next question is more so for your time as attorneys. So when you were practicing fresh out of law school, your first job, how long did it take for you to find your first job? A lot of our viewers are in law school and they're 2Ls, they're 3Ls, they're worried. They'll be taking the bar soon. So can you kind of share, was that a long process for you to start your legal career out of law school, or did you take a different route in the interim? And we'll start with Judge Mason.
My situation was a little different. I found out I was expecting a child the month before I started law school. So I was married, had a 7-year-old, thought it was the perfect time to go to law school. A month before, found out I was having a baby. I'm like, okay. So actually I had the baby during spring break and was off for a week, and then I was back in law school the following week. So yeah, so my situation was a little different. So after law school, I took about a couple of months off and started clerking in the fall. And this is what's interesting. I didn't know anything about clerking because I knew a little bit about it, but I thought I wouldn't qualify because in law school they tell you you've got to be in the top 10% of your class to. So I didn't, it wasn't in the realm of possibilities as far as I was concerned. And then I thought more about it, and I just started submitting the resumes, and I got a call. Judge Mason called me up. Said, I'm looking for a law clerk. Would you like to interview? And I interviewed, and he hired me on the spot. And again, it changed my entire legal career. And I shared that to let you all know, don't let anyone tell you what you can and what you can't do, okay? I was nowhere near in the top 10%, but I sent those resumes out and I got a call. And sometimes you'll have a judge that may be in between law clerks, so you're not competing with maybe, 500 resumes. You just never know. You just never know. So don't let anyone tell you what you can and what you cannot do. But that's sort of my story. Again, it was a little different, being a mother during law school, but I wouldn't change it.
Thank you so much, Judge Mason. Judge Carrington, if you could also share.
Which Judge Carrington?
You.
All right, so for me, I was actually blessed in law school to work as a paralegal for a mentor of mine, a longtime mentor of mine for about 30 years now. And when I was in law school, he had a case in front of the second Black circuit court judge in Anne Arundel County, Rodney Warren. And during a status conference, he said, "You need a clerk, I have someone." I was in law school. He called me and said, "Call this judge." And so I called him, and I came home for Christmas break, and he interviewed me, and that was my first job post law school. And while I was waiting for bar results in clerking, I told my mentor, "I'm thinking about being a prosecutor. I want to be some trial experience." So he said, "Hey, I know Glenn Ivey." Called Glenn, and Glenn said, "Send me your resume. We're hiring right now." So I FedExed my resume, and then 2 days later, I got a telephone conference from Trish Smoot, who was extremely personable, and I came in for an interview, and they hired me. And so those were my first jobs out of law school. And I'm gonna tell you that every person that I named to you was a person of color. It was working in Prince George's County is a unique and tremendous experience.
Thank you so much, Judge Carrington. I want to pose a question now to all of our panelists. This is very important as our mentorship program with Pursuing the Esquire is designed to help and encourage and assist the aspiring minority lawyer today. So one thing that was important for me with this program was the importance of mentorship, because personally I've benefited from mentorship in college and law school and now as a practicing attorney. And I know from experience working with Judge Carrington Martin and Judge Mason that they also really value mentorship, and they mentored me as a law clerk. And so I'd like to hear from each panelist your experience and why mentorship is so important for you in giving back as Black judges in today's society, starting with Judge Carrington Martin.
Okay. So like Judge Mason and like Judge Carrington, when I got my clerkship, it was through someone here. His name is Billy Murphy. He still is a prominent criminal attorney here in Maryland. And he sat down with me and he was quite frank. He said, "Listen, I'm not the mentoring type, but I want to help you." And he connected me with several judges. I was in New York at the time, and he connected me with several judges who were white and African American. And the interview that I received was from the first African American judge in the circuit court in Montgomery County, who was Judge Delawrence Beard. He interviewed me, and he hired me. And from that point, day in and day out as his law clerk, he mentored me. You know, he said, listen, I am a man's man. But, you know, coming from New York, to be quite frank, I was a little unpolished. And he said, you know what, I'm going to introduce you to my wife, who's a prominent OBGYN here in Maryland. And then she started to mentoring me. So she mentored me, he mentored me, and every step of the way, I had people who reached out to me. So it was apparent to me that all of the people who invested in me, I wanted to give back, and I wanted to help the next person. So when I was an attorney in Montgomery County, I was one of only 2 other Black attorneys in that prosecutor's office. And as soon as I got hired, even before I started, the African American attorneys reached out to me and said, let me help you. So every place I went, the African American attorneys always helped out. So that is something that is a legacy that all of you who are in law school are coming into. You have BALSA, and all of the African American attorneys and the law students you see, we all help each other. I don't know where it started. I don't know if it started with Thurgood Marshall. I don't know if it started before him, but all of us have a mentoring spirit. When you go into the prosecutor's office in Montgomery County, and also obviously in Prince George's County, you have mentors. Judge Mason helped me when I came into the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office. So all of us have mentored, because we all know that it is unique for us to be African American attorneys, and we have a responsibility. And as I tell Ms. Hardy, as I tell all of my law clerks, the way you pay me back is by helping someone else out. I don't require anything of you, but when you have placed with an opportunity to help someone, that's when you pay me back. And you have to help the next one. So the law students, you have to go back to your undergrad, and you have to help the undergrad. And even now, as a law clerk, as a judge, when I hire law clerks, I start with my law school and I start with my undergrad. And then I reach out to all the bosses in the area so that they know I am an African American judge. I'm interested in hiring and giving people opportunities. So you are now in a position, and even when you're an undergrad, there's so many people that you know that look like you that are not even in college yet. So you have to help those people. You're already in a mentoring role because you're in college or you're in law school.
Thank you, Judge Carrington. That was very inspirational, and a part of our mission, which is, you know, reaching back, giving that hand, helping the next person, because none of us would be here without the help of someone else. Judge Robinson, if you could also share why mentorship is important to you.
Well, I think it's so true what Judge Carrington Martin, and Judge Mason have said. I don't think any of us got where we were without having some mentors intervene, and I'm no exception. When I graduated from law school, I thought I was going to actually do a federal clerkship in Washington, D.C. with Judge Barrington Parker Sr., and he had a heart attack the spring that before I was supposed to start the clerkship. And so I wasn't able to start the clerkship. And I say, you know, God directs my path in some unusual ways. So I didn't end up going to DC. I ended up staying in Connecticut, where I have had a great career. But I needed to find a job really quickly. And I was able to do that because of my relationships with my faculty, with my professors, my law professors. And so that's what I want to stress to everyone on the call. You have teachers, you have professors, you have people that you really need to stay in touch with, so that if you need them to make a phone call, they know who you are. And you also need to follow up when you get offers from folks like us who say, you know, we're willing and able to help you. I can't tell you how many times I've said that to young people, and half of them never follow up. They never follow up with a phone call, and I can't help you if I don't know you. And if you haven't reached out to me, I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you need. So it is very important to have mentors. In my family, we have this saying, each one, reach one. You know, my grandmother told me the story of how she would work in the tobacco fields in North Carolina in the fall and then go to school in the summer. And her sister, who was a teacher, would send all of her clothes down so she could wear her clothes to go to school in the summer. And then she would send the clothes back for the fall so that they could share one wardrobe. And that's how we got where we are. We got where we are by sharing our resources. We don't always have a lot of them, but I think we all know that we wouldn't be here if we weren't able to share our resources and each one reach one.
Thank you for that. That was very powerful. I think our desire as a community to give back comes from our heritage, knowing that, you know, our success is dependent on helping each other and having that network to rely on, especially when there are obstacles. Even in today's society with all that's going on, you know, that community, that sense of community and help is important and is vital to our continued success. Judge Carrington, can you share the importance of mentorship?
Yes, so my mentor graduated #1 in his class from Howard Law. He worked at Covington and Burling, which was a national law firm, and he was one of the few Blacks to clerk for the Supreme Court. And one of the things he told me was that no one does it alone. And he said all the things that every opportunity he had, someone reached out and helped him get there. And I was one of many college students that he allowed to work for him. And I remember when I was 19 in college, he took me to the Supreme Court with his law school class while he was teaching. I didn't know what was going on, but it was such a great opportunity because as we walked through the halls, a lot of the security and bailiffs, they remembered him because there was only a few Black people that actually worked there. And like Judge Carrington Martin, you know, he took me to depositions and introduced me in, and, you know, we talked about what happened. And he had helped me all along through my career, as I mentioned in some of the other questions. And, you know, it was he's been tremendous to me and others, even till this day. He'll sit down and meet with anyone and give anyone an opportunity. And, you know, it's something that has been ingrained in me that I try to pass along. And the young public defenders and prosecutors that I see before me, I try to do the same. And one of the prosecutors told me about a month ago, they call me Professor Carrington in the state's attorney's office because I speak to them all the time after the dockets. I just think it's incredibly important to mentor. And just like Judge Robinson said, if you reach out to me, we're going to have lunch or dinner. We're going to talk on the phone. We're going to email. I'll say this: the Black male attorneys is becoming an extinct. Can't find them. All right, and there's not a lot of them going on. And when you start looking, Black women are killing it in every profession, but Black males are not. And it's important that we reach out to those Black males to pull them through. I'm going to share this with you. I reached out when I was in the state's attorney's office. We were not getting any Black male interns. And I reached out to the dean of Howard Law, and she said in the class, this was years ago, she said for the class of 2017, there was about 140 students. There were about 20 males. There were only 10 Black males. And so she said the problem is they're not graduating high school, they're not going to college, they're not going to law school. And so she says they were looking at programs to go back to the junior high schools to mentor people to get them through the process. So what I would say is find you a mentor, reach out to people in the panel, reach out to people in the church, the community, other lawyers, because that's where you learn and start to develop your craft in your future.
Thank you, Judge Carrington, for sharing that. Ms. Mason?
I'm very sensitive to the subject of mentorship because in law school, I didn't have any mentors. I was a little older than many of the other students. I went back to law school. I had been out, I believe, for maybe 7-8 years. before I actually, after graduating undergraduate, before I went back to law school. So I had responsibilities that didn't allow me to have the same path as some of the other students. I didn't form a lot of relationships with my law school professors, again, because of where I found myself having other responsibilities. However, when I graduated and I met my judge, you always refer to your judge as your judge when you clerk. And Judge Mason, interestingly enough, is not a minority judge in the majority. That man took me under his wing right from the beginning. And he introduced me to anyone and everyone. And I was his only law clerk. Now, he had been, Judge Mason and I, our careers are almost modeled. He was a prosecutor, I was a prosecutor. Judge Mason was a family court magistrate. They called the masters then. I was a family court magistrate. Judge Mason started on the district court and then went to the circuit court. I started on the district court and went to the circuit court. I can't say that I mirrored intentionally, but that's how it worked out. I was his only law clerk to actually become a judge. And because of how he took me under his wing, I've just passed it on. I've just passed it on. I felt that responsibility to do that. And just as Judge Carrington stated, after the end of the docket, if it's a new attorney, someone that I haven't met before, I'll call him or her up to the bench and personally introduce myself, say, I'm Karen Mason, welcome to my courtroom. I haven't seen you around. Have we been introduced? Sometimes judges, when they see new attorneys, I don't know, they kind of smell blood in the water, and almost for entertainment, they tend to kind of give them a hard time, like you're not from around here. But I've never been like that. I've never been like that. And always just wanted to put myself in their shoes, imagining in a courtroom before this judge for the first time, how would you feel? And I know what it's like, how it feels. So that's why I would take the time to call the person up and introduce myself and let them know if they needed anything, or if they, wanted some pointers, or if they were interested in a critique, a friendly critique. I'd be glad to do that. But it's because of what Judge Mason instilled in me. That's why I've just been even today, I still mentor. It's just a part of me. It is just a part of me, and always will be a part of me. And I'll tell young lawyers, come see me, come talk to me. And some do, and then just as Judge Robinson said, some don't. You won't hear from them again. But I always extend myself, because we gotta reach back. We gotta reach back.
Thank you so much, Judge Mason, and to all the judges. I hope that the viewers can find an inspiration or a motivation to reach out. I know sometimes as a law student, it's a little daunting to reach out to an attorney that maybe you don't know, and especially a judge. But as you all have heard, there's such value in mentorship, and it starts with taking that initiative to reach out. In some cases, you might lean on your network for that connection, but it is so important for your success to move forward with a mentor and with the sponsor as well. And those relationships are built with consistency. As Judge Robinson and Judge Mason stated, they shouldn't just be one-off communications. They shouldn't just be, one-time conversation or a quick introduction if you are really looking to forge a relationship with a mentor. So we encourage you to, really think about how you see mentorship, in your future with this program or with elsewhere, and encourage you to take initiative and really reach out to attorneys. Most of the time, they're very happy to talk to you if you're a law student or a college student just starting out. My last question for the panelists, and I'd like each of you to answer this one. What is the importance or the pressure that you feel as a Black judge in today's society? Because with all that's going on right now, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of miscommunication, there's a lot of distrust with the legal system. And oftentimes you don't come in contact with a Black judge. I remember clerking for Judge Carrington Martin and Judge Mason and seeing the surprise on someone's face when they walk into the courtroom and see a Black judge sitting on the bench as opposed to a white judge. And I think that representation is so important. So for each judge, if you could just share maybe the importance or the impact that you think you have as a Black judge in today's society with the criminal justice system. And if we can start with Judge Robinson.
So I'm not sitting as a judge now, so I don't have the same restrictions as Judge Carrington Martin and Judge Mason and Judge Carrington have. And I say that intentionally because one of the things that happens when you're a judge is you have to behave according to the canons, the judicial canons, which really regulate your conduct not only in the court, but outside of the court. So I think it's very important for everyone on the call to understand there's some things that judges just can't say and do in public that other people who you would think are interested in certain issues can say and do. And I'm not restricted in that way because I retired. But I think one of the things, and you heard it from everybody tonight, is we feel a real sense of obligation to our legacy to be excellent and to inspire excellence and to show the world that Black judges are excellent jurists. And that never stops even when you retire. So I think it's a privilege to serve as a judge. The number of people who get to serve as a judge compared to the number who want to is really small. And then when you shrink that group down to Black folk, it's even smaller. And so we're very acutely aware of the microscope that we are under, but also the power of our existence. You know that saying, just living is resistance? Well, just serving as a Black judge in some ways is resistance. And so it's an honor, it's a privilege, and every day I know that we take that extremely seriously when we're on the bench and even when we're retired from it.
Thank you, Judge Robinson. That was really powerful. Judge Carrington, if you could share.
Sure. So I took the bench at 43. I'll be 47 next year. And when I don't have a goatee, people think I'm younger than I am. And so I know that a lot of times when people walk in court, they look at me, and especially people of color, and I can see by their facial expression, this is the judge. And I know that two of my colleagues in the circuit court, while they were presiding, a woman actually asked could she take a picture with them because she was shocked to see two Black male judges. And I actually had a personal experience where a young prosecutor, her father came from California to see her in court. And after the docket, she said, "Judge, my father would like to meet you." And this was an elderly gentleman with a walker. And he started walking. So I got off the bench and met him. And he said, "I just have to shake your hand." And he asked me, could he take a picture? He says, "Because I've never seen a Black judge before." And the prosecutor told me that her father put the picture on Facebook and that my picture is next to Jesus in their living room. And so, it does mean something to be a young Black male and a judge. I recognize that, and I carry that with me every time I put on that robe, every time I walk in there, walk in the bench, every time I'm making my ruling, every time I open my mouth, every time I have to respond to someone who's being unruly and disrespectful, whether they're an attorney or not. And even when I'm off the bench, you know, I'm not on social media because that sort of thing can get you in trouble. And so I'm conscious in every aspect of my life because I know that people are looking at me, watching me. You know, some of the court staff is looking at you, the bailiffs are looking at you. And so I'm conscious of that. in everything that I do. And as far as what's going on in today's society, what I see a lot of, or since I've been on the bench, was the practice of custom and not the practice of law. And so I make sure that I am practicing law and not the custom of what people may have be used to with other judges who may not be like me. So.
Thank you so much, Judge Carrington. I'm sure you feel like a celebrity now that you are in the home of someone else proudly displayed. Judge Mason?
You asked the question about the climate of today. So you know me, I'm the type, I'm gonna keep it real. I'm just gonna get right to it. The climate of today, the George Floyd climate and the social unrest, it's been difficult for me. And it's because of, Judge Robinson touched on it, because of the constraints that I'm under. I'm not retired. And I want to get out there and put on a t-shirt and, some earrings and a baseball cap and get out there and, and march. That's how I feel. So what I've had to do is, and Scott, Judge Carrington, I talked about walking in your neighborhood. I'm walking at night because I just need to get it out. So I'm just walking and walking and walking and walking. And just, I'm gonna age myself, but I've got Nina Simone and Young, Gifted, and Black in my ear and just walking and walking and walking, all but doing this, And so that's what I felt. I just felt that. So it was that type of pressure. It wasn't the pressure of my job and being a Black judge. Oh God, my first law clerk just sent me a text message. It's pretty interesting. It's not the pressure of the judge. I love the job. I love the county I work in. You walk in the courtroom, because many of you aren't from here. You walk in our courtroom, you'll see a Black judge, Black bailiff, Black prosecutor, Black defense attorney. Okay, so that's not so unusual. But just dealing with the restrictions of what we're under now, and to see the injustices, and we see it from the inside. And I have to deal with some of that. But I stay prayed up, and there's hope, because we're getting ready to we're gonna have the judges on a primarily white bench. They're gonna come to our county next week on Monday, and we're gonna sit down, and we're having a facilitator and to talk about these racial issues. They want to come in and sit and talk. So I'm hopeful. But that's where I find that the pressure in today's climate is just because of the restrictions I'm under. And I understand it, okay? I understand it. But that's been a little difficult.
Thank you for that, Judge Mason. I appreciate your honesty, as I know that, sometimes on the bench, it's hard to express yourself in the way that you would maybe want to, because of how you stated about the responsibilities and the appearance of being on the bench. Judge Carrington Martin, can you close this out with how you have been dealing with this and the importance of being a Black judge?
Okay. So like Judge Mason, I too feel like I want to get out there and I want to wear my Black Lives Matter t-shirt and march. So what I have taken up walking also. What a lot of people, including myself, did not realize prior to being appointed to the bench, a judge is like a captive audience. We are stuck. I can't move. I'm under a I'm under a magnifying glass. Everyone is looking at me, my facial expression, my eyes, everything. So we are stuck. So frequently on the bench, I feel stuck because I am restricted. And when I get off the bench, people are constantly watching me. From the moment I leave my front door, all my neighbors know I'm a judge. They expect me to act a certain way. When I go to the grocery store, I'm always under a magnifying glass. So I walk and I walk and I walk and I walk. I will tell everyone a little, not really a secret, but I was so drawn to Black Lives Matter. I went down there at 5 a.m. one morning just to see it. because I had to see it for myself in DC. So one thing that is very important to me, and it was instilled in me by my mother, was that, and by my Angelou, is that people will remember how you treat them. They may not remember what you say, but they will remember how you treat them. So from the moment I became an attorney, it was very important to me to treat people and to talk to people with respect. So as a prosecutor, when people would come up to the table and check in with me, you know, I'm just a little Black girl from Bed-Stuy. And that has resonated with me. So I treat people with respect. When people come before me, even before this whole George Floyd thing, it's very important to me that, especially people that look like us and people who are uneducated, that they understand the proceedings. So even though they have an attorney, I cannot be sure that the attorney is going to tell them everything, especially in a criminal case. So I look at them in their eye and I talk to them and I ask them to repeat back to me what is happening, because I need you to understand what's going on, because this is your life. So I've always treated people with respect, and that's always been very, very important to me. So even before the whole George Floyd, because George Floyd, that situation happened, but all of the judges who are on this call are well aware from, I would say, within a year of them becoming an attorney, of what has happened to people that look like us. So it's not new for us. We have seen this, and people now have seen it all over the world. So it's very important that you, as law students, all the way through the rest of your career, that you treat people with respect. You don't talk down to people, and that you connect with people and you explain things to them, because lawyers have a tendency to talk a lot and people don't always understand. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you so much, Judge Carrington Martin, and all of the judges. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with each of you, and our viewers have definitely been impacted as they've been very active in the comments, as well as just seeing them observe what you're saying and reacting to them. We do have a few questions from our audience that Tracy will be asking you.
Judges, I feel like I need to do my hallelujah dance, but I don't want to get up because you guys been dropping so much wisdom on us today. The first question is going to go to Judge Scott Carrington. One of our viewers want to know, apart from being a minority, what is the biggest challenge that you have faced as a male judge?
Not addressing. So there's a lot of things that I see attorneys don't do that they should be doing on behalf of their clients. And some of these clients are on the bottom end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Or if you want to see something interesting, go to a landlord and tenant court in the major metropolitan area, and you'll see the imbalance of the poor, uneducated tenants coming in, and these complexes are represented by these attorneys, and it drives you crazy because there's things you want to say and do, but you cannot. And so that is a challenge. So you work between your left and right perimeters as a judge to make sure that the rule of law balanced with fairness is happening. And so that's the challenge sometimes when you see that this person, there's some arguments, there's some defenses that should be said, but there's not because you just don't know. And so, landlord and tenant is completely one-sided for the most part, so.
And can I add on that, because a lot of people don't realize judges can't dispense legal advice.
Yes.
And in the court you're talking about, that's particularly hard because the people don't necessarily have the legal advice that they need. But as a judge, you're not allowed to give it to them. I'm sure you figured out ways like I did to try to point them in the right direction, but we can't actually give the legal advice that a person might need to win their case.
That is so true. I work in landlord-tenant law, and I just want to scream at pro se litigants all the time. One judge usually say, I can't give you legal advice, but I'll give you some street advice, and you should get a lawyer. So thank you for that. For any of the panelists, another question from one of our viewers is, do you think that attending a top law school or not attending a top law school can derail your career path or make it more difficult?
I would say no.
Exactly. No, you, just like Judge Mason said, you cannot discount yourself.
Right.
Do not be the one to discount yourself. You let other people reject you. Do not ever reject yourself. You apply to everywhere. If you want to do, entertainment law, right? Like Danielle, you apply. And if you get rejected, you apply again and you keep applying. Do not take your eye off of the prize, regardless, because guess what? If God put that thought in your head, then he wants you to do it. You just have to figure out how.
I will tell you this. I applied to 11 law schools, got rejected. The 12th one accepted me, and I went, and here I am. It's about what you do as a practitioner, not where you went. As I'm sure with all the other judges, you either presided over cases or you were opposing counsel who went to some top law school and you were not impressed. So don't let the fact that you did not go to a tier 1 name brand law school deter you.
I agree.
Okay, I think our judges have been so clear that we don't have a bunch more questions. So I'm going to throw it back over to Danielle for the sake of time.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for the questions. Again, thank you so much to all the judges. I personally appreciate you taking the time out to speak to our viewers tonight. Your presence alone is amazing and helps all of us succeed. I'm going to throw it over to Kirsten to close us out, but I did want to ask if any of our viewers, any of our students would like to reach out to you, if you could put your information in the chat box for the best way for them to contact you, and so they can follow up after this call. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Kirsten.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten Evans. I am a team member of Pursuing the Esquire, and currently I'm a law clerk for Judge Hill in PG County Circuit Court. And so this panel has been so special to me. My law clerk experience has been a valuable one, and I've learned so much from my judge and all the other amazing judges in the county. And so I really want to thank the judges for your time this evening and for sharing all of your expertise. You all are truly a model of excellence and inspiration. Thank you so, so much. I want to thank all of our participants for signing on and for all of your attention and your questions this evening. You all are truly, truly investing in your futures by tuning in tonight. And I'm very inspired by you all and proud of the work that you're doing for your future. And I just want to say, please join us again next week. We have another panel for, the topic is Divine Nine, and it's a sorority panel. That's also something special to me, as I'm also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So you will hear from some esteemed attorneys across the Divine Nine sororities. Follow us on our social media platforms at Pursuing the Esquire for more events and helpful information. And thank you all so much again for attending, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kirsten and Danielle, I'm a dinosaur, so I don't know how to put my contact information in. So between the two of you, get my information.
We got you, Judge
Yeah. Okay. Because I'll start putting buttons and I'll be gone. The screen will go black.
And can I just
Also,
thank you for coordinating this? This was fabulous. I didn't know Danielle. We connected on LinkedIn, and she followed up right away. And I just want to thank you for a fantastic job in pulling this great panel together. Thank you for
Great job, Danielle. I'm so proud of you.
Also, if any of the judges want to come and actually be a judge in Brooklyn Housing Court, I will really appreciate it.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
enjoyed it. Absolutely enjoyed it.
Enjoy. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Have a great evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Bye.